Wichita, Kansas, stands at a critical juncture in its history. Once a thriving aircraft manufacturing hub and agricultural center, the city now confronts a deepening humanitarian crisis that tests its capacity for compassion, innovation, and collective action. Homelessness has emerged from the shadows of public consciousness to become one of the most pressing social challenges facing this Midwestern community. What was once dismissed as a problem affecting only society's margins has evolved into a complex emergency that touches every sector of civic life, from healthcare and education to economic development and public safety. The homelessness crisis in Wichita is not merely a statistical abstraction or policy challenge confined to government offices and nonprofit boardrooms. It represents thousands of individual stories of hardship, resilience, and lost potential. Behind every number in a shelter census lies a person with dignity, dreams, and the fundamental human need for safety and stability. These are parents separated from their children, veterans who served their country only to return home to economic insecurity, young adults aging out of foster care with nowhere to turn, and workers whose wages can no longer keep pace with rising housing costs. Understanding homelessness in Wichita requires moving beyond simplistic narratives and moral judgments. The crisis cannot be attributed to personal failings alone, nor can it be solved through punitive measures that criminalize poverty. Instead, it demands a rigorous examination of systemic failures, economic transformations, policy decisions, and social structures that have converged to create conditions where a significant portion of the population lives one paycheck, one medical emergency, or one family crisis away from losing their homes. This comprehensive analysis explores homelessness in Wichita through multiple interconnected lenses. It begins with an examination of current data that quantifies the scope and nature of the crisis, revealing trends that should alarm any community committed to shared prosperity. The analysis then investigates the shelter system's capacity challenges, identifying critical gaps between available resources and actual need. Particular attention is given to the most affected demographic groups: veterans, families with children, youth, and individuals struggling with mental health conditions and substance use disorders, each facing unique barriers to stability. The roots of homelessness extend deep into the soil of economic inequality, inadequate affordable housing, healthcare access barriers, and social welfare systems that too often fail those they were designed to serve. This analysis traces these causal pathways while examining existing government and community programs, assessing their effectiveness and limitations. Most importantly, it proposes structural solutions that address root causes rather than merely managing symptoms, including employment pathways, public awareness campaigns to reduce stigma, and human-centered policy frameworks that place dignity and effectiveness at the center of intervention strategies. Throughout this examination, a central thesis emerges. Wichita's homelessness crisis, while severe, is not insurmountable. Communities across the nation have demonstrated that with political will, adequate resources, innovative thinking, and sustained commitment, homelessness can be significantly reduced and, in some cases, effectively ended for specific populations. The question facing Wichita is not whether solutions exist, but whether the community possesses the collective determination to implement them at the scale required. This analysis proceeds from a fundamental conviction that homelessness is a solvable problem, not an inevitable feature of modern life. It rejects defeatism while remaining realistic about the challenges ahead. The path forward requires moving beyond crisis management toward genuine resolution, replacing bureaucratic inertia with innovative approaches, and embracing a moral responsibility to ensure that every person in Wichita has access to safe, stable, and affordable housing. The stakes could not be higher, for the measure of a community's character is revealed in how it treats its most vulnerable members. The current state of homelessness in Wichita. Quantifying the crisis, current homelessness data. The first challenge in addressing homelessness is accurately counting those affected. In Wichita, as in communities nationwide, homelessness data collection faces significant methodological challenges. The annual point-in-time (PIT) count, conducted each January as required by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, provides a snapshot of both sheltered and unsheltered homelessness. However, this single-night census inevitably undercounts the true scope of housing insecurity, missing those temporarily staying with friends or family, living in vehicles in isolated areas, or avoiding enumeration due to fear or mistrust. Recent data from Wichita reveals troubling trends. The sheltered homeless population has shown consistent increases over the past several years, with emergency shelters operating at or near capacity throughout winter months and increasingly during warmer seasons as well. The unsheltered population, those living on streets, in parks, under bridges, or in other places not meant for human habitation, has proven more difficult to enumerate, but represents a growing concern for outreach workers and public health officials. What makes Wichita's situation particularly concerning is the rising number of first-time homeless individuals and families. These are not chronically homeless persons with long histories of housing instability, but rather working families and individuals experiencing homelessness for the first time due to economic shocks, job loss, medical emergencies, domestic violence, or sudden rent increases that exceed their budgets. This shift in demographics suggests that homelessness in Wichita increasingly reflects broader economic vulnerabilities rather than solely individual circumstances. The chronic homelessness population, defined as individuals with disabilities who have been continuously homeless for a year or more, or who have experienced at least 4 episodes of homelessness in 3 years, represents a smaller but highly visible segment requiring intensive intervention. This population typically faces complex combinations of physical health conditions, mental illness, and substance use disorders that make traditional housing approaches insufficient without comprehensive supportive services. Youth homelessness presents another deeply troubling dimension. Young people experiencing homelessness, including unaccompanied minors and young adults aged 18 to 24, face unique risks including exploitation, interrupted education, and long-term economic consequences. Many have aged out of foster care systems without adequate preparation or support networks, while others have fled abusive home environments or been rejected by families due to LGBTQ+ identity. The data also reveals significant racial disparities in homelessness rates. African Americans and Native Americans experience homelessness at rates disproportionate to their representation in Wichita's general population, reflecting broader patterns of systemic inequality in housing, employment, criminal justice, and access to social services. Understanding and addressing these disparities is essential for any equitable response to the crisis. Shelter system. Inadequacies and capacity challenges. Wichita's shelter system operates under constant strain, revealing fundamental mismatches between capacity and need. The city's emergency shelters, operated primarily by nonprofit organizations with limited public funding, face overwhelming demand that exceeds available beds, particularly during winter months when exposure to cold weather poses life-threatening risks to unsheltered individuals. Emergency shelters in Wichita typically operate on a congregate model, housing multiple individuals in shared sleeping spaces with minimal privacy. While these facilities provide critical immediate safety, they are not designed for extended stays and offer limited support services to help individuals transition to permanent housing. The result is a revolving door pattern where individuals cycle repeatedly through shelters without accessing the resources needed to achieve housing stability. Families with children face particularly acute challenges within Wichita's shelter system. Family shelters operate with strict capacity limits and often maintain waiting lists, forcing families to separate or remain in unsafe situations while awaiting space. The trauma of shelter living, loss of privacy, disrupted routines, Separation from schools and support networks compounds the already significant stress families experience when losing housing. Domestic violence shelters represent a specialized component of the shelter system, providing safe haven for survivors fleeing abusive relationships. These facilities operate with enhanced security and confidential locations, but similarly face capacity constraints that leave many survivors without immediate safe alternatives. The intersection of domestic violence and homelessness is significant, with intimate partner violence being a leading cause of homelessness among women and families. Youth shelters and transitional living programs serve young people experiencing homelessness, but available beds fall far short of documented need. Young people often avoid traditional shelter systems due to safety concerns, age restrictions, or previous negative experiences, instead surviving through couch surfing, staying in risky situations, or remaining unsheltered. The lack of age-appropriate shelter options leaves vulnerable youth exposed to exploitation and interrupts critical developmental periods. Beyond emergency shelter, Wichita's housing continuum lacks sufficient transitional and permanent supportive housing units. Transitional housing programs, which provide temporary accommodation combined with supportive services for up to 24 months, offer a bridge between emergency shelter and permanent housing, but remain severely limited in capacity. Permanent supportive housing, which combines affordable housing with ongoing support services for individuals with disabilities or chronic homelessness, represents evidence-based best practice but exists in insufficient quantity to serve those who would benefit. The shelter system's capacity challenges are compounded by facility conditions that, while meeting basic safety standards, often fail to provide environments conducive to healing, stability, and forward progress. Overcrowding, limited storage for personal belongings, restrictive rules, and lack of daytime services create barriers for individuals trying to maintain employment, attend appointments, or access other resources necessary for housing stability. Funding constraints perpetually limit shelter capacity expansion and service enhancement. Most shelters operate on precarious financial foundations, cobbling together funding from government contracts, foundation grants, individual donations, and fundraising events. This funding instability makes long-term planning difficult and leaves shelters vulnerable to service reductions during economic downturns when need typically increases. Staffing challenges further strain the shelter system. Working in homeless services requires specialized skills, including trauma-informed care, crisis intervention, and case management. Yet positions typically offer modest compensation and demanding conditions. High turnover rates interrupt continuity of care and institutional knowledge, reducing program effectiveness. The shortage of qualified, experienced shelter staff reflects broader workforce challenges in the social services sector. Most affected demographic groups. Understanding who experiences homelessness in Wichita is essential for developing targeted, effective interventions. While homelessness affects people across all demographic categories, certain populations face disproportionate risks and unique barriers to housing stability. Veterans represent a population of particular moral concern, having served their country only to face housing instability upon returning to civilian life. Wichita, with its military heritage and proximity to military installations, has a significant veteran population. Veterans experiencing homelessness often struggle with service-connected disabilities, including post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injuries, and physical disabilities. The transition from military to civilian life presents challenges, including difficulty translating military experience into civilian employment, loss of military community and structure, and inadequate discharge planning for those leaving service. Despite federal initiatives specifically targeting veteran homelessness, gaps in services persist, particularly for veterans with other than honorable discharges who may be ineligible for VA benefits. Families with children constitute a rapidly growing segment of Wichita's homeless population, challenging the stereotype that homelessness primarily affects single adults. Family homelessness typically results from economic crises rather than chronic housing instability. Single-mother households face particularly high risk due to wage gaps, childcare costs, and limited affordable housing accessible to families. The impact of homelessness on children is profound and long-lasting, affecting educational achievement, physical and mental health, and future economic prospects. Children experiencing homelessness face interrupted schooling, social stigma, and developmental disruptions during critical formative periods. The McKinney-Vento Act provides educational protections for homeless students, but implementation challenges and gaps in supportive services limit its effectiveness. Youth and young adults, particularly those aging out of foster care, face precarious housing situations with limited support systems. Young people who have experienced foster care, juvenile justice involvement, or family rejection often lack the familial safety nets that help other young adults navigate the transition to independence. LGBTQ+ youth face disproportionately high rates of homelessness due to family rejection and discrimination. Youth experiencing homelessness are vulnerable to exploitation, including sex trafficking, and face barriers accessing services designed primarily for adults. The developmental needs of young people require specialized approaches that support education, employment training, life skills development, and healthy identity formation. Individuals with mental health conditions are significantly overrepresented among those experiencing homelessness. The deinstitutionalization of mental health care, beginning in the 1960s and continuing through subsequent decades, failed to create adequate community-based treatment alternatives, leaving many individuals with serious mental illness without necessary support. The stress of homelessness exacerbates mental health conditions, while untreated mental illness creates barriers to maintaining housing. The intersection of homelessness and mental illness requires integrated approaches that address housing and treatment simultaneously rather than requiring treatment compliance as a precondition for housing. People with substance use disorders face similar challenges, often experiencing homelessness as both cause and consequence of addiction. Substance use may predate homelessness, or individuals may turn to substances as a coping mechanism for the trauma and stress of housing instability. Traditional shelter systems often exclude individuals who are actively using substances, while abstinence-based treatment programs require stability that homelessness makes difficult to achieve. Housing. First approaches that provide immediate access to housing without sobriety requirements have demonstrated success in engaging this population. Older adults experiencing homelessness face accelerated aging and health deterioration due to the physical demands of unsheltered living. Elderly homeless individuals often have complex medical needs, mobility limitations, and cognitive decline that make traditional shelter environments inadequate. This population has grown as affordable housing for seniors diminishes, and Social Security and pension benefits prove insufficient for housing costs. The combination of homelessness and aging presents urgent health risks and requires specialized geriatric approaches within homeless services. Individuals with disabilities, including physical, developmental, and cognitive disabilities, face substantial barriers to both housing access and housing retention. Inaccessible housing stock, discrimination by landlords, and insufficient support services create pathways into homelessness for people with disabilities. Once homeless, individuals with disabilities struggle to access disability benefits, health care, and accommodations necessary for housing stability. The Americans with Disabilities Act provides legal protections, but enforcement gaps and limited accessible housing options persist. Understanding these demographic patterns reveals that homelessness in Wichita is not a monolithic phenomenon, but rather affects distinct populations with unique needs, barriers, and pathways out of homelessness. Effective interventions must be tailored to these specific populations rather than applying one-size-fits-all approaches. The affordable housing crisis. At the foundation of homelessness in Wichita lies a fundamental mismatch between housing costs and incomes. The shortage of affordable housing represents the single most significant structural factor driving homelessness. While housing affordability traditionally means housing costs consuming no more than 30% of household income, many low-income Wichita residents spend 50, 60, or even 70% of income on housing, leaving insufficient resources for other necessities and creating extreme vulnerability to homelessness. Wichita's affordable housing stock has eroded through multiple mechanisms. Older affordable units have been demolished or renovated into higher-cost housing without equivalent replacement. Natural attrition of aging housing stock, combined with insufficient investment in new affordable housing development, has created a growing gap. Federal housing programs, including public housing and Section 8 vouchers, serve only a fraction of eligible households due to funding limitations, with waiting lists stretching months or years. The private rental market, which houses the majority of low-income residents, has seen significant rent increases outpacing wage growth. Property owners facing rising taxes, insurance, and maintenance costs pass expenses to tenants, while market rate development focuses on higher income renters offering greater profit margins. Landlords' screening practices, including credit checks, criminal background checks, and rental history requirements, create additional barriers for individuals with past housing instability, criminal justice involvement, or poor credit. Eviction emerges as a direct pathway into homelessness, and Wichita experiences eviction rates that destabilize families and individuals. Eviction records create lasting barriers to future housing, as prospective landlords deny applications based on eviction history. The eviction process itself often moves rapidly, leaving families with little time to secure alternative housing or legal representation. Eviction for non-payment of rent may result from temporary income disruptions, job loss, medical expenses, car repairs, that could be resolved with modest emergency assistance, yet formal eviction proceedings begin before such assistance can be accessed.